We are in, folks, on an IG Live with @TheKevinE, my global thespians. It's a Friday on the day we're doing this. You may be watching it on a Tuesday, but it's Friday. And this is, really fun, sexy subject I call Deconstructing Casting. And pencil firmly in hand, the question is going to become, when this is over, why is this important? Here's the reason why. Because from the written word, in any form of a breakdown, I don't care, again, what language, what country, it doesn't matter. When somebody scribbles out a description of a supposed role and supposed casting, hey Don, happy Friday. When someone does that, what we naturally do, and it's not our fault, it's just what we do. We work hard, really fast, without thinking about it, to find a way to cast ourselves in that, whatever that written breakdown is. It's just natural, y'all, because we're a profession that struggles to get legit opportunities, and then, of course, naturally, 90 to 98% of the time, you don't get hired. So there's nothing wrong with the fact that we, as I phrase it, read ourselves into casting all the time. And because of digital technology and because of electronic submission portals for the last 15 plus years, since about 2003, 2004-ish, 5, where they became somewhat proficient, certainly since 2010, we are allowed to sit with ourselves and read ourselves into everything. And I personally don't think that, aside from the money you may spend or the time you may spend, I still believe in a place called hope. I don't think, personally, that creating extra things you hope you'll get called in for that may not even remotely be the way it would be cast is not necessarily helpful for our cabeza. I'm always talking about our psychology, guys, where we live, how we live. So that's why it's important. And I'm not expecting you to learn or dial in on this the way that I have over the years. I'm not expecting that. But I am sharing with you that if you would just, at least, this whole live is about giving casting their due consideration in terms of why they have to do what they have to do, whether we like it or not. That's just the way it is. So with that said, let's start out with kind of the baseline that you have to start out with casting, and that is, if something is precast because of the nature of names or stars, then that is going to determine a lot of how anything from there on out is cast. I know you know that. But when you deconstruct casting, you have to start with, number one, this is a visual profession. We're not discussing voiceover in this live. So the visual part of this profession is age, weight, height, and ethnicity. Okay? That's just what that is. So that's the first. But with that, you have to also understand, when you take into consideration the geography of either the feature or the show, that plays a ton into casting. It just does. And I like to try to keep it simple. I don't like to lose my mind on what the heck that geography is. It typically is rural or it's city. And I already know, everybody starts yelling at me. I already know that we believe we can play everything. Okay. That may be the case, but I'm telling you right now, you don't look like you can play everything. And especially in television, when you don't have a long period of time to establish the audience's willful suspense of disbelief, casting comes into massive play based on whether or not we believe. And the larger the role, if you're not a star, but the larger the role, I mean, guys, if we're discussing stars, just set that aside in terms of being cast. It affects casting, but set it aside in terms of being cast. But take, for example, this face here, okay? This one right here. Now, I've had a lot of people who've met me in my life because I talk fast and I'm direct, who thought I might be from the East Coast. But if you were casting somebody who actually was based in the East Coast and somebody had darker hair than I do, doesn't matter why, it's just a common thing that, Paul Christian, you might be cast more for an East Coast guy sooner than I would. It doesn't mean it's black and white, guys. It's just the way it goes. So you have the visual part of casting, you have the geographical consideration of casting, rural or city, and then you have the environment. What I mean by that is the main setting of the show or the feature, is it mainly set in offices? Is it mainly set in one's home or a neighborhood? Is it mainly set out in the woods or some place that would be safari-ish? The type of casting we do will be affected by the environment that most of the show or most of the feature is in, for lack of a better phrase. Okay? That's another element we don't consider. Now, while this doesn't happen all the time, because I think a higher percentage of the shows and things we watch in today's world are in current times, the reality is, hello, McFly. Number 4, era. And it doesn't have to be severe period piece. We don't have to be going Downton Abbey or going way back. Again, just take the incredibly popular show Mad Men. Okay? I can give you a whole bunch of people, when you think about John Hamm, that you just wouldn't have cast. But because John Hamm looks the way he looks, aside from being a name, there's plenty of names. They got plenty of names to cast, folks. But when you think about Mad Men, you think about the era, and you look at all the rest of the people in that cast, especially the main cast, but also when they would cast the guest cast and the co-stars, the era in which something is, whether you like it or not, is a huge part of what the casting offices have to deal with in terms of the notes they get from studios, networks, or from their boss, executive producers. It's just how it is. It doesn't matter whether it's a feature or not. It is simply how it is. I read, to give you an example, a very recent example at the time we're recording this, I read for the current show Gaslit on HBO. And while I slick my hair down, I look different, and I can look certainly like a typical politician in the 60s or 70s. The reality is that that's an example of a show that the era is not a long time ago, but it's not the era of today. All right. Ew. Learning to walk without falling. I love that. Just tell me your name and how you heard about us, learning to walk without falling. I love that. That's great. Welcome in. So that's number 4. Okay. The other element that we have to take into consideration with the visual, with the environment, with the era, and also the geography are the character, hey, Carly, what's up? Is this. You have to recognize whether or not a character is basically white collar or blue collar. Blue collar being a little more of someone who is a working kind of profession. Hey, Anisha, I'm so happy to have you in here, Miss Double A. A working kind of person, such as a plumber, construction worker, etc., or white collar, which we tend to identify by as simply being more educated, such as a lawyer or a doctor. But here's the point. This is why I do this in the order that I'm doing it in. Just because something's more geographically rural or more geographically city doesn't mean anything. But you guys imagine, just for a moment, to give you a simple example of what I mean about deconstructing casting is this. You tell me the guy who is right, the gal who is right, to cast as a specialized surgeon on a TV show, any TV show, that's based in a major city, Paris, London, Chicago, New York, don't care. Female or male surgeon, white collar profession, based in a major city. Now, take the same type of profession, but have that person be in a rural location. Maybe even in a different era. Don't sit here and tell me you think they would cast the same physical human to be a female East Coast surgeon at a facility in a modern day hospital versus a female doctor in the era of Deadwood. It's going to be a different face. And I get it, we just simply don't consider that. And the whole purpose of this live, you guys, is to bring us to a place where we cease taking stuff as personally as we tend to naturally do. That's all I'm trying to assist with, is that you deconstruct how they go about arriving at who they cast and why they cast it, simply because of geography, white collar, blue collar, and where everything is at, the environment. And also, one of the elements that goes into this as well is you have to bear in mind, it doesn't matter if it's a film cast or a TV show, it doesn't. But you have to bear in mind, when you look at the collective cast of anything, you have to determine for yourself, when you're looking at the breakdown, what do you think the type of group that the cast members make up? Okay? You have to look at that. Hey, Rapsteezy. You have to look at that, okay? The type of group. So we just had a huge successful show that just went off the air on what we call American broadcast television, which is This Is Us, right? And I would tell you that most of that show, even though they shot in various locations, that would have been considered a baseline show that was predicated upon family. Most of the environments that they were in were related to family. However, what's one of the most common types of groups that we get in television shows and films? Civil servants, firemen, police stations. You have to look at where most of this show is going to take place. Couple that with the era and the geography and the white collar, blue collar. Then you actually get back to the visual, age, ethnicity, height, weight. Now you start recognizing why people get cast, why people even get an audition for things, okay, that otherwise maybe, just look at The Office. Let me give you these two examples here, okay? When you look at The Office, the actual show The Office, remember this. Yes, it's an office setting, right, of a group cast. Group, doesn't matter, comedy, drama, don't give a shit, okay? We could just be talking about LA Law. It makes no difference. So first of all, the fact that it's in an office means the entire premise of the group of the type of the cast is mostly white collar. But in an office setting, somebody who is the boss man, or somebody who is a bookkeeper, or somebody who's a CPA, or somebody who's dealing with operations, these are, as we know in life, if you were just casting somebody who was in marketing or just casting somebody who's in sales, even just sales versus accounting, you wouldn't cast the same type of person. And yet they're all in an office and they're all in a white collar position, blah, blah, blah. Now, same issue. But if you you've got differences within each of the job descriptions. When you bring something into a police environment, if most of it, such as Hill Street Blues way back in the day, is going to take place in and around the actual precinct, you have a lot of similarities because you have a lot of people who are uniformed officers versus detectives, which is stuff that I get called in for a lot. A detective is not a police officer. And the chief or the politicians that surround that are also different. So you got to look at the type of group that this show is in if you want to deconstruct casting and not have it be something that bugs the living crap out of you. Okay, because that's what I'm really trying to avoid for us, is that we take into consideration, same shit in a commercial, okay? This is why I tell people in commercials all the time, pay attention to the commercials that get aired around the particular show. Don't just look at the commercial. Look at what it's running during. And take note of if the show that it's running during is more of a white collar or blue collar, same type of product, right? Cars are a really good example. Watch how the casting changes. Just watch. Just watch, man. And you'd be like, oh, yeah, 1 + 1 does kind of equal 2. It'll start making sense. You know, when you start paying attention to a minivan commercial for a car that airs during this show, and yet a similar type minivan, but not really a minivan, maybe more of an upscale SUV, airs on that type of show, watch the casting. Whether it's a mom or a dad getting out of I don't care. Watch how the casting changes. And I'm not asking all y'all. I'm not. I'm a mental case. We know this, okay? Okay, that should have been way funnier. I'm a mental case. I've been breaking this shit down for 3 decades. But I always did it, you guys, to protect me. I did it so I had a fair understanding of all my friends in casting and all the people that I respect in the challenges of people who know me, and they've known me for a long time, and they know I'm going to come in and do a good job. And a friend of mine goes in for a commercial, and I think to myself, why didn't I go in for that? But we all don't look alike. I mean, we make these bad jokes, and it doesn't matter to me that we live in a racially sensitive time. I mean, Americans have been making jokes for years about this particular group or that particular group. Y'all all look alike. Yeah, guess what? All white guys look alike too. The truth of the matter is we don't. No group of any kind all looks the same. And there's a reason why your buddy of any ethnicity may have gotten called in for something and you didn't. And that's part of the thing. So also when you look at the precast, especially in commercials, when you look at the precast, if it's a type of group that's a family, well, who is the matriarch or the patriarch? Who's going to be the focus of that particular family? When you look at something that is some type of, let's say, civil servant environment or office environment, Steve Carell, right? Ricky Gervais, right? A lot of casting is going to get based upon that person. And you guys all know, I bet a bunch of you guys have already experienced in your careers where you were the son or the daughter or you were the husband or the wife, and you found out later whether you got the job or not, especially when you get the job, that if you weren't the first person they cast of that family, and by the way, sometimes the first person they cast in a family in a cereal commercial is the 7-year-old kid. It's not always necessarily the parent, all right? But whoever's first out of a family of 3 or 4 or whatever it may be, guess what? Rest of the casting is going to get surrounded by that person. There's not shit we can do about that, y'all. There's no reason to get aggravated in this profession. There's enough to get aggravated about, man. There's enough. So you have to realize that there's so much that governs the elements of casting, and here's the other problem. And the other challenge is the following. And boy, you want to start getting into independent films. You want to start getting into student films. And as we call them today, contractually SPA projects, short project agreements. You start bringing money down to where the budget is really tight. And what's the word that happens? It's the David Bowie word, changes. A lot of shit changes sometimes, guys. I mean, they put all ethnicities for a reason. A lot of times we like to think of it as, oh, they're doing open casting. And sometimes you guys, if you were a part of the back end of that, if you knew the showrunner on that show, if you knew the studio or the executive producer behind that feature film, you might realize they put all ethnicities because there's a really strong likelihood they may change the ethnicity or gender of that character like that. And what they don't tend to do, unless they're struggling, and I mean really struggling to cast that job, they're not going to send out a new breakdown. Now that does happen. It's happened a lot. I mean, you go to commercial, I've been to commercial auditions, go to a callback, and the next thing you know, you're trying to figure out who got the job. Nobody got the job. A week later, you see an entire new breakdown for the same damn commercial, and they do an entire recasting. That happens, okay? We know that happens. But in theatrical, especially television that's on an 8-day cycle, not necessarily a pilot. They could do it on a pilot. They ask any manager or agent, ask your representative. You'll see pilots come out on a breakdown, and 3 weeks later they put the breakdown back out, and one of the series regulars has changed. Happens all the time. But more notably for the guest cast and the co-star cast, they're not going to resend a bunch of breakdowns. Why? Because we live in an electronic casting land. And every time they put some stupid shit out, any place in the world, this is not just Los Angeles, you guys. This is not just the United States of America. This is London. It's Sydney. It's Melbourne. That we're all on the same page with the electronic thingy. They don't want to put it back out because if they put out a breakdown again for another guest star, they're going to get 3,000 more electronic submissions. No, what they wind up doing if something like that changes is they either commonly go back to a previous casting they've had where the character they've changed today's cast to would have fit the audition submissions they got for the other job because they don't want to resubmit it. Or they just go to their faves list. That's why I've always said you're never auditioning just for this job, ever. You're auditioning to stand in a mental and literal file of the studios, the networks, executive, and the casting director's mind that this is somebody who is, I can always give, here comes Paul Christian, your demo reel, credible consideration. Because there are times something will change. And it doesn't just change from Caucasian to some other ethnicity. No, it flips around all the time. We're long since past that a change in casting is always going to be from a standard this ethnicity to that ethnicity. Bullshit. Anyone tries to tell you that's on serious crack. No. They'll go from African American to Asian, from Asian to Latin, from Latin female to black male. There is no So again, we can't get caught up in that kind of guessing. And don't, because it's not healthy for you, man. This is my bigger concern and my long-time concern. It's one of the reasons why, yeah, I'm a smartass. Yeah, I can be hard-lined about stuff. But I've been doing this for a while. I've had seriously long-time friends in casting. I've had hundreds of conversations with the consternation that they too put up with their employers not giving them enough notice on shit that gets deleted, pulled, added, changed at the last second. Holy crap balls. Happens all the time. It's deck chairs on the Titanic in casting a lot. It just is. Now, some of that will be related to how well of an oiled machine the production is and how strong of an iron fist the showrunner has, for sure. But at the same time, you just have to know that it happens. But if you don't take into consideration and understand that I can play kind of a heavy bad guy in daytime television, but on a really edgy East Coast television show, whether it's shot in Los Angeles or not, playing a really heavy bad guy, if they don't literally want someone who looks like Opie to be that guy, I'm probably not going to get called in because I just don't look East Coast edgy enough. The difference is, guys, I just don't take that personally, man. That's all. Far too often, we as actors just take this shit personally. It's like, what? Why do you do that to yourself? Just don't. I promise you, no matter what type you are, no matter what age you are, no matter what ethnicity you are, no matter what size you are, and anybody who knows me knows, I talk about us like widgets because we are. I don't do it in life. I do it about this business. It's all over my book. Will knows this because he has the damn book. It's all over my book, you guys. I mean, I talk, whether you're tall and thin or you're short and chubby, whether you have a big chest or a small chest as a woman, you can't get your hair is red, it's blonde, it's short, it's long. Guys, if you think you're going to somehow alter your physical appearance to match everything you should get called in for, while you're trying to do that, you're altering yourself in a way that's going to keep you from getting called in for 27 other things. You can't, you gotta make sure you feel good about your physical product and just go. Because you're going to not be right for the same amount of shit you were right for because they changed it yesterday. And if you try to play that, shuffleboard game, trying to do that, you're going to make yourself mentally unhealthy, in my opinion. Because you can't chase how much casting changes. Any casting director will tell you that. You just can't chase it. I can't do a damn thing about the fact that I was one of two people on a choice and commercial and suddenly they decided to change, the wife to an extremely dark-headed person, and the kid was dark-headed, and so they need to switch the guy to an extremely dark-headed guy. I can't. It sucks. I'm not arguing that. It sucks, but I can't change that. I'm not ever going to change that. That's why when you sit in the chair of being an actor, which is not being a filmmaker, which is not being the producer, if you are not in charge, and we aren't, and I've been in charge of a lot of shit in my life, obviously. I've built a company, run a company, I've produced like 43 some live events. I know what it is to be in charge, and when the decisions and shit are on me, I got that. But when I'm just being an actor, my ass not in charge, okay? It's not my decision. Let me see what Will has written here. Had a breakdown the other day, which I would love to have gone out for, but I don't have the film geek. Yeah, correct. And you are correct, Will. You don't. That is correct. You don't. Again, we can constantly chase things, but when you really sit down and you start looking at your visual product, right? And you look down at the actual geography of where this project is being done. And then you look down at the actual environment it appears to be being shot in, and the era in which it is being done, whether it's just contemporary current or whether it's something else. And then you really address whether or not you are more in your essence white collar or blue collar. And then you look at the type of group that you seem to be surrounded by. When you take all that into consideration, I guarantee you, while I know it's hard, because I still believe in a place called hope, I realize that we all want to hope that we get called in for something. I get it. But if you take all that into consideration, it will absolutely unequivocally affect how often you submit yourself for things. It would change a conversation that you have with your representatives, especially if you're going to go meet with a representative to consider being represented by them. These actors ask me all the time, what kind of questions do you ask when you're an agent or manager meeting? It's like, hello, when you deconstruct casting, that actually give you a couple of 3 questions to talk to them about. That's how I've always done this, from the inside out. But changes happen, man. So just understand that, yeah, sure, sometimes a written breakdown actually is sufficient for John Q. Professional to assess, decide, and submit. And that breakdown stays consistent with the way that it reads, and they wind up casting something that looks really similar to that. Okay. But most of the time, you might kind of be a little surprised by, oh, they went that way? Guys, there's a current show that's on, it just became a pilot. It's called Acapulco, and they're shooting it in Puerto Rico, okay? It's a Latin show, one white dude. So Trainwreck, that'd be me, read for it, okay? Great part, hysterical, love the guy. Too funny for words. And when I read the breakdown, I was like, yeah, I can see why they're reading me for this. Totally get it. Show's been cast. Being shot right now. I found out who got the job that I read for. Is 20 years younger than me. 20 years younger. Not 2, not 10, 20. Okay, I can't blame them. That's fine. You can look at the show, you can look at the cast and go, okay, he works, that's cool. But to your point, Will, whether or not you're not film geek look, or whether or not you're just not going to play 20 years younger than you are as a normal person, it's like you shrug your shoulders and move on. You know, as long as you continue to do good work in your auditions, your job interviews, people are going to continue to call you in, because people do talk. Not as much as we like to think, but they do talk. Okay? But save this note on Deconstructing Casting in this particular live, which of course, if you're not subscribed to my YouTube channel, please get over there to YouTube at the Kevin E and subscribe. Get all your friends over there, because I'm only keeping these things on the grid for a couple of weeks. Some things are going to change. Better than that talk my parents ever gave me. Thanks, Michael. But this is going to be one I promise you might want to go back to a lot and rewatch, just as a simple reminder, because casting is what it is. All right, we are at the 30-minute mark. I keep you guys on schedule. Thank you for being here. Please tell all your friends and loved ones globally. Get the Global Thespians over to my YouTube channel and here at IG. Have a great holiday weekend. This was Deconstructing Casting, and I hope you liked it. I will see you guys really soon, okay? Obviously, no show on Monday, Memorial Day in the United States, big national holiday, but we will have a show on Wednesday, 6/1. Great to see you, Anisha. You guys be good. Take care. Awesome. Bye.